I'm Clint, and it's time for portfolio review number 2, as we look at the art of Tekkoontan on this episode of Swatches. Just want to say this one is really nice. I like this piece. The only thing that I would suggest on this piece is maybe rethinking the design here on the thighs, because this piece doesn't really work. You could not bend or run because this piece right here just looks painful. It would jab you in the abdomen in a very uncomfortable spot. I cannot do anything when that's in preview. Okay. This piece needs to bend down so that he can pull his leg up and not stab himself with that point. Also, the top of the thigh is one of the simplest shapes on the human body. It's not flat, but it's consistently round in the same way in almost any position. The rest of the body can bend and contort. Things have to be made so they can be bent in odd ways. But on this, there's no reason to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces on an area that really doesn't change shape. So I'd suggest in here, bend that down, and then maybe make this into one piece. And if you want to have some details, just like you have some like ribbing down on this one, and that's cool, just use that back up here on this one too. So bring that ribbing up here and let that be on one larger piece with a larger set of that ribbing going across, and let that be a simpler piece. There's a lot of detail going on here, and it feels like you just went kind of on detail overload, trying to add a lot of stuff. But in this case, it's just not really necessary right there. Okay. This one. Now, I apologize, I did not take the time to look up what Shadowtide was. We were doing a lot of images for it, and I'm really a fan of a lot of the designs going on here. I don't know what this is, some sort of city, I assume. Personally, I think it's kind of cool. However, rendering-wise, there's a couple of things to be aware of. The first thing is always be cautious of placement when you have a floating object that is not tethered to anything. Because I, as the viewer, have no idea how big that is. And you go, well, it's a floating city, you said so. I'm guessing that that's what you're trying to go for. You know, it could not be a city. It can be a toy that is 3 inches tall and it's simply close to the camera. You can't prove that otherwise. So there needs to be some cues in the image that tell me this is big and it is located X distance away from us. Now, you have a little bit going on. There's kind of some hazy cloud stuff going on in front of it. But again, that could be at any point between me and it. As far as I know, this could be really close. This could be really far away. And there's a cue that you've put in that tells me that this is closer than it should be. And that is, if we eyedrop this, you can see that the darkest color here that I'm eyedropping is almost black. All right. Let me reset my palette. There. This is really close to black. And that shouldn't be that way unless it's really close to us. This mountain is pretty close to us, so there can be blacks in there. Let me get something a bit brighter. If this dropped a straight line down and connected to there, then I'd assume that this probably goes down and connects to maybe that sort of location. This is maybe further away. If this one is much further back, maybe he's about there. The darkness needs to drop at the same level for the ground as it does for the city, and vice versa. So you see, there is no blacks. There is nothing on the ground at this point. The darkest dark is right here. You can see that. I sampled that. That's the darkest dark at this distance from us. And that's here. That means that the darkest dark for the city, because it's at the same distance away, should be that, which is obviously much lighter. The same thing goes here. The darkest dark that you can have at that distance is this, which is much lighter. So we need to get a lighten layer after we put this back to RGB. Okay, lighten layer, of course, only lightens things that are darker than itself to itself. You cannot paint anything darker than the pixels that you see with a lighten layer. So I am going to pick this darker blue tone, and I'm going to paint it over that. And then I'm going to pick the darkest tone in this green and shift it to blue just to correct the color temperature, and paint it over this city. Okay. And I will pick the bluish tone there, paint it over this guy. Now this guy is closer, so he's not adjusted as much. So now when we look at the city, we feel like it has the same distance away as the same spot on the ground. Now that is a very fast way to do it, and obviously you lose your details, so when you want to be more precise than that. You want to copy the layer and adjust the levels up and play the lights back down into it. But that's just something to be aware of. Now this same sort of thing happens in images where people paint planets. Say that there's a planet in this background. Make a new layer. And say we have some sort of purpley planet. And it has some light on it. Now, that planet can't show up like that. The only way, it's just bothering me, I have to put texture in it. It must have some kind of texture. That's massive. There we go. There's no way that planet can show up darker than the sky at any spot, because when you look up at the sky, you're actually seeing outer space. Outer space is black, but the sky is blue. Therefore, the darkness of black has been adjusted to whatever the value of that blue is. And all other darks have to correspond to that. The only way that anything can be darker than the sky that is outside the sky is if it is darker than outer space black, which obviously doesn't happen, so it can't happen. So if you ever paint a planet in a sky, then you need to set it to the lighten layer so it shows up this way. It's the same way that glass works, in that it only reflects things that are lighter than it. It can't reflect anything darker than it. Okay, enough on that topic. Maybe that's a whole other video. Okay, don't say. No paint overs on this one. I just want to say this is a cool scene. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm interested. I don't know if these are little people who have captured a big person or cloning a big person, you know, normal people with a giant or what, but that's kind of cool. Okay. On this one, make this fast. Character design wise, I have a little problem with these. Okay, I've got to get this back to RGB so I can actually, okay. These things, understand that you want to have some tech and cool metal stuff, but visually they serve no purpose whatsoever. If they were to connect to any kind of plate or wire or anything connect to them or show me that this outfit is somehow held up by these things, then I would buy it. But right now, it just doesn't make any sense. The other thing is, be careful about outlining noses, which you've almost done here. You really want to play down the outside of noses, especially on females. Actually, all of the nose. You want to play down the nose in almost every case, unless you're doing some ugly witch with a big pointy nose. So play that down. Also, play down the darks in the hair. This is titanium white hair, and it is going black, which it shouldn't be going black. It is going to reflect light onto the other parts of itself too easily to allow adjacent areas to become black. So I would suggest raising the ambient value of all of that hair. Again, even under the hair is not going to get that dark because the hair is going to reflect all that light right back down. Small things. Okay, save. Compositional note here. I like the scene. I like him in the city. I like destruction. I like this thing is like damage. He's yelling. It's cool. Evangelion sort of thing. However, the first time that I look at this image, I look right here. I know this is the main character, but all this perspective says, look right here, and there's nothing to look at. So, be careful of that. Again, let's switch over to RGB. Okay. So, if you're going to have this, it's good, it's a cool composition, but you have to address the fact that the eye naturally wants to go here, and then there is nothing to look at. So you have to offset that somehow. If it was me, I would probably offset that with atmospherics. Oh, look, there's a cloud of destruction. Actually, what you could do is give me some indication of where all this ash and sparks are coming from. Because if that's the case, then should be a lot of smoke. And what you'd want to do is just sort of fuzz that area out so that the eye doesn't feel like the eye instinctively knows that there's nothing to look at. It's just foggy atmospherics, and it doesn't really need to look down there. And you could have some blurry shadowing of fire back in there, and you can have your silhouettes of destruction, and you can have some fire glow and light here in the foreground, just so it's not a standalone thing. Just make it something that goes throughout the piece. Now when I look at it, I don't feel like I have to look right here, because this smoke and haze and atmospherics tell me that there's nothing to look at, and that I should just find something else in the image to look at. That was hardly put very eloquently, but hopefully you understand what I was talking about. Okay. The other thing is play up the destruction. Show me this building had the crap beat out of it, and there's stuff sticking out, and maybe there's fire coming off of it, and the windows are busted out, and some buildings back here, show me that those are busted back here. Break the windows up and more of these. And personally, if it was me, I'd probably have a cloud shadow going over some of those buildings. I don't really need those lights there because I want to look at him. And that's the other thing on him. The light is a little ambiguous. I think that you could really strengthen it if you had a more unified light going on. You just have sort of a top-down light, but it doesn't follow the shapes in a real realistic pattern. So if you had a strong upper light so that, you know, he had a dramatic underside is shadow, top side is bright, then it would have a bit more impact. I'm trying to do this fast, but there's some complicated shapes. But you follow what I'm saying. Bright light coming down, if this was midday light. Otherwise, if you want side light, then make it side light. Then let that one side be nice and bright, let the other side be shadow. The last one, I like this machine. I don't know if you created this machine or if it's already from something, but I'm a fan of this. This looks cool. It feels like it has a lot of weight. I like the way that it's hunched down in its legs. Feels heavy. Some nice details around here, like helicopter cockpit, sort of industrial. I don't know. It's a cool mix, and I buy it. And I say, okay, yeah, this thing could definitely go out there and kick some butt. The only things I just want to say about this is sort of just storytelling and just helping push the atmosphere up a little bit. You know what? You don't really need to see that. I'll move this over. Okay. One thing is you've got these yellow lights coming out, but they're not actually shining anything. They're not illuminating anything on the ground. So I would suggest, again, I keep forgetting this is an index. There. Then I would suggest actually showing the illumination on the ground. And that would just be consistent with the lighting of what's happening there. On this guy, I feel like this guy could be shadowed more in his face, and then let some other light, maybe there's some other blue light behind him, and let that kind of tell us. And use a different color light source on him. That blade doesn't have a light shining on it, so that could be dark on that end, and let it get light at the other end, because that's the end that has the light source. Again, you don't have to play it up much, but just a different color, and basically that's the only other place that color is, so your eye will check it out. You can have a little bit there on the background too. I think that's a slightly subtler way to handle that. Yeah, okay. The other thing is you could play around with the lighting a bit more. With a shadow, I'd like to think that we have enough detail going on this guy that we know what he looks like. This guy is just for support, and I think that if you played up that there was a shadow falling across him, you know, like from here, from a building up there. Oh, actually, that's the tone writing. So you want to play down his contrasts and all of that. And it's not going to be picking up any strong lights on the ground. These guys would be a bit more silhouetted. Then you can have that stronger light hitting the mound behind them, and it can really line up across there. Can you let it fall all the way across and let that kind of be a thing going on? You can use it to blow out that building a bit more. Actually, I think it'd be better is if just the back side of this thing was getting some light on it. Just along the very edges. It'll take some time to get the subtlety right, but it's some small changes, but it just helps give a bit more of a cinematic light to it and push the attention around in different places. Okay, well that's all for those images. I want to thank Tekkoontan for offering his portfolio for us to look at, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Again, don't forget to subscribe if you like this, and leave me a comment with a link to your gallery if you want to be put on the list for possible reviews in the future. And until next time, keep drawing.